Hello. Hello and thank you, and welcome to the afternoon session, Govis Day 1. My name is Mick Crouch. About a third of this room will forever know, from now on, know me as Lindsay. Some of you know what I'm talking about. I am the incoming treasurer of Govis, so it is my greatest pleasure to thank all of our sponsors so far. The afternoon tea and this afternoon stream is being presented to us by Intergen, so thank you very much, Intergen, for the afternoon tea. I'd also like to thank IBM for the juice, coffee by Eagle, the ice cream from Critchlow, which is great. We haven't had ice cream at a Govis conference in several years. I always think it's a bit odd having ice cream in June, but it's going over really well, so thanks again for that. I have been asked to bring your attention to the EDP stall, the EDP corner in the room, which has a bunch of really funky old equipment. Again, any of you who know me at my other role at Archives New Zealand know that I'm a nut for digital preservation and old computers and stuff like that. We've got an old digital system attached to what was the first internet gateway in New Zealand, and he's going to try to connect the VAX machine through that gateway to Reykjavik, Iceland, which is the reverse of its original purpose. I was talking over lunch about that old gateway, and how there's probably some systems in Wellington that are hardwired to the MAC address of that box that are going to suddenly spring to life, you know, things that haven't been working in years. Like, look, Bob, it's working. Oh, it's gone. So update your MAC addresses if that happens. So we have a couple of presentations this afternoon, and then we're going to have a drinks and a social event starting at 4:30, which is being brought to you by Datacom. I really hope you all come and join us. We're going to have a special entertainment. I'll leave it at that. Besides the drinks and nibbles, there will be entertainment, so that'll be fun. Thank you, Datacom, for that. So there's 2 sessions going on in the stream. The first is going to be presentation by Mandy Smith and David Philp. Mandy works at NZPost and David works at DIA. And if we accept that NZPost is a private enterprise, then we can talk about how Realme is a successful collaboration between government and private enterprise. And with that, I will introduce Mandy and David. Thank you very much.
Actually, I'm going to be the wandering minstrel, I think, in this session. Thank you all for coming back after the other sessions and allowing us to give you a bit of an idea about how it works in practice when you've actually got a public and private partnership where the drivers are quite diverse. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I think that from my perspective and a DIA perspective, there are some real great opportunities at working in the private sector, working with the private sector, but also some realities that come with that. So, Mandy, perhaps you could start us off.
Yeah, so this is obviously going to be a collaborative presentation, seeing as we are in a partnership. So we're not scripted, so you'll see us bounce around a bit, but through each slide we're going to try and give you a bit of perspective from both the private and public sector. So, I mean, obviously there needed to be a reason why we came together, and at the heart of that reason is that there's a common problem across both the private and the public sector. We're all struggling with how do you easily identify your customer when you're dealing with them in the digital world. Very easy to do in person. There's lots of documentation that you can use to actually prove who someone is, but then it gets very hard in a digital world. And so, you know, it really was the common problem that brought us together. If I look at the private sector, you know, top of mind at the moment in the private sector, especially for the banking sector, is the anti-money laundering legislation and our need to meet that. You know, and as part of meeting that, we have got new requirements around know your customer, and they're a lot more stringent around that. But banks, as you know, like most organisations around the world, are trying to take more and more transactions online. So how can we confidently do that, and knowing who our customer is and our first time interaction, and then have confidence to go in and transact with them? That same problem sits out there whether you're talking to utilities and wanting to know who their customer is in signing a new customer up, so switching customers, or needing to know who the customer is when the customer comes in and wants to change something on their account profile. You know, you've all been through that experience of talking to call centres, and you know, you have to answer a range of questions because they need to know who you are, and they're not able to put those services online today. Insurance is another area. You know, there's the private side of the health sector, the private side of the education sector. All of those organisations are looking to have an easy and effective way of knowing the customer in a digital environment.
Yeah, and I think government, it's more or less the same. If you look at the screen up there and to, probably to your left actually, we've got a number of the government agencies there as a representation of government, but people want entitlements, and they do want to do that sort of transaction where possible with least hassle, and least hassle for many people is online. And I think that in this world, really, the government agencies really would like to do business in a lower cost manner. And lower cost because government has got an expectation that we will work and collaborate together across agencies, let alone with the private sector, to ensure we can reduce costs right across the ecosystem. I think though also that government agencies really have to get it right in terms of who are you. And there's a lot of work goes in to making sure that the agency is dealing with the right person. And that is always a challenge, and it's an expensive challenge. So there are opportunities to lower that cost, create an easier way for people to gain entitlements and prove who they are right across the public sector.
So just as we have a collective problem around the identity, we also have a collective problem across both the public and private sector around, you know, the changing technologies. And, you know, no doubt that's been a bit of a focus of this conference. You know, our customers are wanting to interact with us across a multitude of channels, but they're not actually looking to us to turn off any one channel. So, you know, the sort of common analogy we get out of the financial services sector is more customers want to interact with us digitally online, and in fact, you know, since the advancement of smart devices, we've seen a sort of spike or an increase in the adoption of internet banking, which is fantastic. But they still say to us they still want a bank branch and they still want a call centre, and so, you know, that's the challenge that we've all got with customers if you're putting the customer at the heart of your transactions. And then, so how do we effectively deal with them in a cost-effective way, and how do we have solutions that can go pan-channel? You know, and that's, you know, again, a common problem that we're working on.
I think too that there's an expectation that people want to do business when they've got the time, and that brings challenges for any service provider, and that once you go online, or even in the call centre world, I suppose there's a significant challenge in doing that 24/7 bit of business. And in a sense, you're never closed. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that you need to have the infrastructure behind any solution that will support a customer, firstly in perhaps the online channel, but if there are issues in the more traditional channels, particularly in the call centre view, 24/7.
So that leads us all to wanting to, focus on service delivery transformation. Whether you're talking to an organisation in the public or the private sector, you're seeing very similar themes come out. People are really wanting to improve the relationship with the customer, give them a better relationship. So, relationship management's key. Customers not having to repeat information to the organisation. The person that they're dealing with being empowered to know about them. They want effective customer onboarding processes or, enrolment processes. So not only making it easy for the customer, but getting the information right first time and not ending up within this cycle of going backwards and forwards until you get all the information. Looking to straight through processing, making it so that you can automate this, systemize it. I often say, imagine the world where it really is paperless. Is there a potential out there? We've talked about paperless society for so long. I don't know that anyone believes it's possible, but this sort of type of enabling service can allow for those sort of things to happen. And then about fulfilment, how do you quickly meet a customer's need instead of taking weeks while you go through an in-person paper-based process? Having the confidence to immediately go, okay, I know enough about you to move ahead.
Thanks, Mandy. I think my experience has been particularly around the fulfilment, that you actually do have to provide the complete service online. I've got a bit of a background in passports, and one of the things that we thought about very strongly is that we've got a process that requires us to be able to identify the person online. We've got to be able to actually complete that transaction online. They don't need to do anything, and that meant we had to look at our process. And for those of you that haven't got a new passport in a while, in the past, for instance, you had to send the old one back, and just taking that small step and saying no, you don't anymore, means you've really got to think your whole business proposition through and look at the levels of risk, for example, that you're prepared to take to actually meet your customer need.
So what we've done is hopefully just build up a bit of a sense of the common business problem that we're trying to move on. Yeah, there we go. Hopefully it won't click through. That we're trying to work on together, because it is a common business problem, and both the Department of Internal Affairs, the government, and New Zealand Post saw that that it was a problem that needed to have joint thinking applied to it from both the public and private sector. Anything that we worked on wasn't going to work if it probably just worked in either one or the other sectors. It needed to come together collaboratively. So why a private-public partnership? The big things is that our two organisations can bring respective strengths to this opportunity. So if you look at New Zealand Post, we're a very trusted brand. It's one of the highest trusted brands in New Zealand. So customers are very familiar with us. We provide an extensive distribution network with our physical post shop outlets. So one of the key things in delivering a high level of evidence of identity process is that we actually at some point in the process need to know who the customer is and actually see them face to face. So we needed the facility of a distribution network to be able to do that. New Zealand Post has that with its biometric capture-enabled stores. Obviously we work in the world of extensive, marketing. So, we're developing new products and services all the time within the Post group, whether that be as part of Post or as KiwiBank. So one of the skills that we're bringing in is how do you grow out customer adoption and getting private enterprise on board. So today New Zealand Post has relationships with all the major enterprises in New Zealand in various forms, not just in mail but through the bank. So, bringing in those relationships to help build out this market.
Thanks, Mandy. From obviously a DIA perspective, we've got the link directly to the decision makers in terms of ministers. But with DIA in itself, a lot of experience in the identity business. We have the authenticated data. We know who people are, and we know a little bit about them. So what we bring is not only some expertise, perhaps in the policy and standard setting, but also the actual intellectual property that enables a platform like Realme to actually operate. We also have good experience in processing transactions in terms of determining when somebody applies for something, so I guess this application processing expertise that you really need to work well so that you can keep timeframes down and also costs down.
Yeah, so I mean the whole purpose of this partnership is to bring our complementary skills together, and you know that's exactly what we're working on, and we'll talk a little bit later about the lessons learned in doing that. But you know, fair to say, you know, we're a couple of weeks out from launching the new service, but certainly we've seen a strong collaboration and those strengths played to in the partnership. You know, but the success will be in the future adoption of this. But yeah, so far so good. One other comment I'd make on here is, you know, for a country the size of New Zealand, to make a service like this work, you really do need the two parties to come together. Because as David said, you know, you've got the identity information sitting in government. It's key to be able to access that and to have the confidence in the identity and to be well supported around the policy and legislation. But equally, you need an all-of market to actually make this economically sustainable. And this is very much about a service that's enabling all of New Zealand. So we talk a lot about working in an ecosystem. That's absolutely our strategy. You know, this is something where we all have to work together. So while we have a close partnership, actually our partnership is with every organisation that's in this room that's actually needing to identify customers. We've all got to work together to make that successful, because our population size doesn't really allow for lots of alternative solutions in this space. Moving on, so the journey that we've been on,
Perhaps I could start with that one, just
Yeah.
because I've been in my current role and responsible for Realme for about 4 months, so I haven't been on a very long journey at all. But I think from a government perspective, while DIA and Post have been working together for a number of years, the journey started really in the State Services Commission, and in fact in the group that I'm now accountable for, there are a number of people who have made that journey from SSC to DIA, and I'm not going to profess to know all of the history and the bumps along the way because I hadn't been involved. I think it is fair to say that kernel of the ideas and the willingness to move forward certainly was there well before the DIA New Zealand Post partnership.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think what was interesting is, so DIA went into a consultation period with the public sector a number of years ago, in which, the private sector, and you know, which fed in that there was definite market interest out there in a digital identity solution. They then ran a contestable exercise to see who would be the partner, who would partner with them. Obviously, New Zealand Post was successful in being selected as a partner, and you know, I'd like to think that it was also about the work that we were doing in the identity space. So, about 6 years ago, New Zealand Post started to diversify into doing identity verification services. We almost call it like going back to our old history of when there used to be a post office master. Because they used to do the identity checks, and I think at one point they were even able to marry people back in the good old days. But so it was going a full circle of history for us. But we started to do identity verification services on behalf of third parties. So today, even in the Post Shop network, we can verify customers for the likes of GE Finance. We do inland revenue, tax number applications. But we quickly saw in working with third parties that actually they had a need for a digital solution. So the timing was great in the way that the two organisations came together, because there'd been, you know, really some really good solid thinking on both sides as to how to make this work. So, you know, we've embarked on this journey. It is a long-term contract where we're both going to be working together. Obviously, coming up to launch date, as I mentioned before, is one of our key first milestones, and then the focus will really be going into, well, it has been even to date, but will continue to go in adoption around the enterprises that use the service, as well as the customers, and driving that uptake.
Yeah, I think one of the things that interested me quite a lot was just the contractual arrangements that we have with Post, and how that they will evolve along the journey as well. And we've already had one evolution of those, and once we get past the launch date, then we have to look again at our operating model and how we're going to work together so we meet both of our needs.
So one of the first things that actually happened in this journey together, when we came together, because you know the sort of services as iGovernment today, was as part of building out a private sector proposition, we went into the market and did quite a lot of consumer research, and there were some key points, no surprises in terms of what came back around trust and security of the service, and that the customer really feeling like that they owned their identity. And so that led us into delivering or developing a consumer benefit-led brand. So this is where Realme was born from. So we did a lot of work, not only researching with the customers, but then testing the proposition with customers, getting their feedback, so that we could gauge how big the market was, what were going to be the key drivers to actually get the customer engaged and make it work for them, so that they had a strong sense of ownership. So that led to the launch of Realme brand, and which will be launched in properly from the 1st of July.
It obviously still builds on something we're already doing, and in fact we obviously have the log-on service, and we also have an iGov ID, which is the earlier version of the Realme. And so a lot of work being done in the background to try and bring those two products, not just with a fresh face, but actually more robustly, more securely on newer platforms. So a lot of background technical work as well.
Which leads us nice into this. So as David says, we've built upon those core services that are there. What I didn't mention, one of the other things that we're bringing in as part of the New Zealand Post side of the partnership is the address verification service. So this is actually putting a name at an address, a bit like you do with your TradeMe registration, and that's a key requirement for the anti-money laundering regulations, so that we actually know that somebody's residing in New Zealand. But what we've got here with this platform is something that we can grow out into the future, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that in the next slides. But it's, as David said, it's built on a very solid login platform, but we've put some Realme bits to the top, which will deal with the identity verification service and bringing through, what we hope was a great customer experience around making it easy for customers to share their identity online.
Yeah, I think also that we're separating the things. So you can have a log on in an anonymous way, and we'll be able to continue to do that. But also, if you want to create an account that's verified, that then you can assert your identity, you'll be able to do that as well. I think that we've heard earlier today about infrastructure as a service, and the way that particularly the log-on service is currently structured. It's DIA with a vendor. I wonder myself whether that's going to be the model in the future. I don't think so. But I think DIA will always have an interest in how we manage that common log-on across government.
And obviously, for us jointly to be successful, we need to ensure we're going to be delivering the benefits. And so, we're really focused on building upon the voice of the customer. And when we talk about the customer, that's both the consumer that will use, or the citizen that will use these services, but also the enterprises or the agencies as well, because both are customers to us. And it's really important for us to deliver those benefits. And so, what we have up here is, some generic benefits, but what we do is, again, as part of our ecosystem and working in a collaborative way, is really work with the organisations so we can understand for each individual organisation specifically what is it going to deliver. For the consumers, for most of them, it is that big drive around convenience. The classic feedback that we always get back is, I want to be able to go home, sit on the couch and do this. I don't want to have to turn up and go in person and do the service in my lunch hour. I've got better things to do. And I want to be able to do it 24/7, so when it's convenient to me. but I need to have the security, the trust and the security of the system, and I need to have that control over where I'm sharing my private information. Do you want to talk to the agency ones?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit to the agency one. I mean, obviously, as government, we've got Result 10, Result 9 and 10, in fact, and while Realme currently is focused on the individual, that doesn't mean that we can't have services where a person has more than one role, one identity but multiple roles. But government's obviously interested in putting more services online. For all of those good reasons that we've heard during the day, where we can provide better service when people want it, lower cost across the ecosystem, and just make it easier for people to get their entitlement or apply for a service when they want to do it. I think that when we start looking at that as a collaborative effort between Post and government, I mean, this is a primary example where we've used post-market research. We've also coupled that with the work that Result 10 has been doing to understand the customer need. We've used Post's experience in the private sector market to know what turns on the private sector in terms of benefit realisation. We've used our understanding in DIA about what government agencies need to, what are their drivers, I guess. And so it's a way that we've tried to use those complementary, not only skills but experience to add value to the total offering.
So obviously being in a partnership, it's not just about launching the new service. We need to be focused on delivering or developing the future roadmap. So, our whole goal is to work within an ecosystem here. These are just ideas that we've put up about, potential information sharing that we can do in the future, and there'll be a following slide that talks a little bit more about it. I think really what I want to focus on, though, is it is being part of an ecosystem. So the Realme platform gives us some fantastic technology to be able to reach out to organisations so that we can better share information. And to talk about, an example of how things could collaborate over private and public sector, what's really interesting is when you open a bank account, I don't know if any of you've done it recently, but, typically the banks are going and saying, well, I need to know who you are, I need proof of income in some situations, if it's about a loan. I need to know your tax number so I can make sure that we're taxing any interest that you earn at the right rate. I'd like some credit score information that would be useful to have too as part of, depending on whether it's a loan or not. Now, when you listen to that, there's information that needs to come from both the private and public sector. And so the identity information is the key that unlocks us being able to reach out and get some of that other information and being able to share it. But equally, in the public sector, it's the same challenge, isn't it? So, maybe talk about
Yeah, and I certainly don't think it's different at all. We might not want the credit score necessarily, but all of the other attributes that people may have, we do want to know, because that will help us, firstly, get the response right, but more importantly, enable us to automate the process in a much greater way than we have in the past. So if the information is coming in, then that can be fitted right into the process to allow decisions to be made within systems rather than every time a comparison by people. And while there's nothing necessarily wrong with the comparison around people, it is a more expensive way of processing what are quite often repetitive processes.
So, effectively where this starts to lead our vision into is having an information ecosystem where it puts the customer at the heart of their information, but allowing them to be able to easily share that information from the benefits of their home or wherever they want to do their digital interaction, or even in fact, in future with mobile devices, being able to support them, being able to do it easily in a branch or an office situation, but being able to bundle up right pieces of information together so that it can be shared as packages. So I think I talked to you, earlier about the anti-money laundering requirements for banks, and that requires identity and address to come together. That's a starting package that we have for day one. We're talking to other organisations, and they need to know absolutely the residency status of a customer. So you start to see how these pieces will come together, and that's what we're working on as we move forward.
I think too that you'll notice from the diagram that there's a consent service in there towards the middle. That's really important, and government was very keen to ensure that the individuals who is consenting for their information to be provided to another agency or the private sector did consent to that on every occasion. Now, I'm always wondering when I'm coming into this process whether people may get tired of that, but at the moment, certainly consent on every occasion is a key part of the Realme platform. And I think that you can also see from the diagram that we do have a number of agencies that are both providing and receiving information, and I think that will just grow and grow. And if you think about something that's perhaps not typical of where this type of thing might go, you might be thinking about the dating agencies, for example. And we've had a lot of interest from them because to offer a really high quality service, they want their customers to be very confident about who they're dealing with online. And this sort of service can offer that opportunity. So while the first interaction might be somewhat anonymous, certainly people that want to meet other people want to know that the person is a genuine identity and be able to look them up, I guess, in other online ways. So, if you think about the model, it's around not only government or business wanting to know about people, but it's people wanting to know about people. And so it's got a kind of third branch that you might not first see as something that's quite obvious. I think the other thing in the diagram here, if you look at the application suite in the middle here, we see quite an opportunity for not agencies, for the private sector to build applications that will make it easier for the row along the top to be able to use the information. So there's plenty of opportunity in there, and we don't necessarily see it being either a Post or a DIA responsibility to do that, although there may be some areas where Post actually do decide that there's a market opportunity. But I think there's quite a lot of market opportunity there for vendors.
So we're just going to wrap up with a few lessons learnt along this process.
Yeah, it's even in the short time I've been involved, it is a very frank and open relationship, and things don't always go as we might expect because we've got quite different business drivers at our core. I think really, Post has been asked by its owner to provide a dividend and really use the capital that's been provided in a profit-motivated way. In government, we're really looking for the more social objectives and actually providing really good customer services around government service. So those things, those two drivers are quite different when you're coming to work through how a partnership might work. And it's how you share costs. Who does what? Who's accountable for what? And while we use our strengths, we always have to make sure that we are working to both sets of drivers.
Yeah. And that leads into, because we do have different drivers, we do have different cultures within our environments. And one of the things that we learned early on was we needed to bring, so we've both got project teams working on them, is actually to bring them together as a single team and start to get them to think about a real me culture that bridge both cultures. because they are different. They have to be different just by nature of the type of endeavours that we're undertaking. But it has worked well because, respectively, we know what both sides is able to do is challenge the other as to why something has to be that way, or is there a different way of doing it. And so long as you encourage a really positive culture around that, it can actually really foster some great outcomes. So we now have a sort of real me culture that bridges across the two, and we'll be doing more around that. But yeah, and initially it is, and it's simple things. It's just even for us to understand that there's quite a different sign-off process in the public sector to what we have in the private sector. So we might go, well, that's fine, we'll just do it, and it's suddenly like, well, okay, no, we're not going to do that. No, we have to do it this way. Equally. DIA will come in and say to us, but the social component of this is really important, and we wouldn't have understood that. And then, then we'll go, oh, okay, actually that really makes a lot of sense to us, and if we can do that, then that will help us go where we need to go. But it takes time to build that up. We've been on this journey for a couple of years, and I think that it's just going to get stronger and stronger as we go ahead.
Yeah, I think a good example, obviously. Kristen Rain, our Minister, spoke this morning and looked at it and talked about innovation and moving forward. But of course we know in many ways that it's good when you get it right and it's not when you don't. And there's different ways of dealing with not total success. Anything in the government that goes wrong, and we've had some of those issues in terms of privacy in recent times, very high profile. But we don't hear about what's happened in that respect in the private sector. And so we deal with issues quite differently, and there's quite a lot of learning to do about how you get that balance right to make sure that we are presenting the right face for government, but also the right face in the private sector as well. So I think, in conclusion, that one of the things that I've really found in the short time I've been involved is that the key to it is coming back to the joint problem that we're solving, and forget about there are differences and different ways of doing it, but we're trying to solve the same problem. We're trying to build on strengths, and sometimes we forget that a wee bit and we talk about each other's weaknesses, but we always get back to, so how are we going to solve the same problem?
That's it, I think.
Thank you very much. But happy to take questions.
Good.
He has my microphone. Well, that was really, really fascinating. And there's a lot there that you can dive into as far as questions go, but I'd like to make sure the questions are related to the collaboration efforts of Realme and not any of the other trickier questions. Anybody have a question?
Thank you very much. That was a fantastic presentation. My name is Suneet Prakash. The question is, given that you have different or diverse business drivers, how did you go about getting the business case approved? What were the business, you obviously would have had business cases, how did you get them approved?
So we both had individual business cases, and I think because this is, but what we both recognise is that this is enabling the whole of the economy, and so there's benefits out of both sides, and that, because we have got this common problem, that's what's made it easier to achieve those respective business cases. As David talked about, the way that the partnership evolves as we go forward is to say, well, while we understand each other's business cases, is there a way that they can come closer together as we move forward rather than having respective business cases?
I think that's true, that we really, as we look to the future, it's saying, okay, here we are in a business together. We've been working towards this launch. Now we're operating a business. How do we look at each of our costs, for example? How do we look at our investment models, our cash flows? And that will come together in a much greater way as we work through the future operating model, and it will be an evolving one. So at the end of the day, I think we'll be going back to government and looking at funding in a sustainable way over time. Well, we'll both be contributing to that business case, and it will be on the clear understanding of where, for example, some of the costs fall.
Hi, Linda Smith from the Earthquake Commission. You talked about bringing your Realme team together from both sides. Did you co-locate everybody?
We really tried, but it's been extremely difficult finding a space to do that. But they're working collaboratively together, you know, as much as we possibly can, with lots of regular meetings and team meetings and things. It's something we're still working on, actually, because we do want them in the same location. It's just finding some space that will work.
Yeah, we both wear out shoes very quickly because we're at kind of other end of town. And while what we've kind of compromised on in the interim is to put people in for certain periods of time, and so not the whole team together, but just individuals to start with. You know, that's another challenge. We're working in different systems, different networks, different challenges to be able to get in one place, and I think that that's something that at a governance level we were actually talking about today, and how we can actually get that space without incurring more cost.
Hi, thanks. I see this as like a government portal, which I found quite appealing, but sharing with the private sector made me a little bit worried. Will you consent into the individual private organisations you share your data with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the model is designed to work across private and public sector. It's designed in a fully privacy-centric way. So the information that will flow through Realme will always be consented by the individual as to be shared. So they will know that, and they will see that, and they will have a record. And on day one, that starts with the address information that they'll be registering for.
Yeah, I think it's, if you think about the proposition that, and if I looked around this room, I'll bet that not many of you have regular interaction with government from a government personal point of view. You might do some tax, many won't. You might you know, register your vehicle, you might do those sorts of things, but for this to be successful, it has to have ubiquitous use, really, and we're looking for people to use their or assert their identity or some of the attributes that might go with that on a reasonably regular basis. Then we don't have the issue of, you know, forgetting passwords, for example. And I think that at the end of the day, for it to be truly successful, it will have to work to New Zealand, for New Zealanders in any part of the social and economic ecosystem that they're actually operating in. And that includes offshore.
Any further questions?
Sorry, we were just talking about over lunch about what happens when, you know, a collaboration goes on for years and years, and then someone is always new that is arriving. How do you inculcate the new person, and what's it like to be brought into a team that's been going for a long time?
I'll let David.
Yeah, no, I can answer that. I guess from I had the advantage of not coming in entirely cold, and because being in passports, which is, I suppose, the most trusted identity document in New Zealand, that you get a bit of a feel for what's been going on. But it is actually a challenge, and I'm not a sit back and quiet person, as Mandy, I'm sure, will testify to. So I came in with some preconceived thoughts, and one of the things is it actually takes a little while to actually get those through and understand. And what you've got to do, I think, from somebody coming in is actually acknowledging the history, acknowledging the work, and not saying, okay, you've done this, but I want to do that. You actually got to think about that for quite a while. And while it's it can be difficult to actually break into that group, I think if you do that, then you've got a chance. And, you know, working with the people and being frank and forthright about what your ideas are with your own team as well as your partner. And if you do that, I think can work out. And Mandy and I have known each other in different scenarios around government and post for a long time, so it wasn't like we had met each other on the first day, I guess.
But I think, you know, you raise an important question, because one of the things, you know, we're working on now is what does that longer term operating model look like? And you know, succession planning, just like any business, is really important, and making sure we've got the right people there to get that continuity going. Because, you know, then there's an immense amount of knowledge that's been built up in our collective teams around this proposition, and we need to protect that IP and grow it. So we are very focused around more, it's not just a project team, it's actually a business unit that's got to operate in a successful way going forward, and we have to make sure we've got all the right disciplines in place to allow that, so that when, you know, David and I move on to other things or whatever, you know, that continuity will go on. And the same thing, you know, with our business, you know, our business leads in there, and the project managers, and everyone else that's involved. So continuity is key, because there's a lot of IP being developed as you do this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Little glass bubbles.
Thank you.